Hi there, my name is John Champion from Champion Property Management here in Norwich and Norwich Student Lettings. If you're watching this video, it's probably because your son or daughter or perhaps a family friend has asked you to be a guarantor for their upcoming student tenancy. Guarantors are really important in student tenancies because students have no real financial security or backing and they wouldn't pass a credit check, so ordinarily they couldn't be accepted as tenants. This is where you come in. With a guarantor, we ask for somebody that can pass a credit check and has some financial security to guarantee that the rent will be paid so the landlord's happy to accept them. In this circumstance, if the tenant doesn't pay their rent within 14 days, the agreement kicks in and we come to you and ask you to pay the rent as agreed. Now, before we can accept you as a guarantor, we of course need to run a credit check, hence the form that you've been sent. If you're able to agree to that and send that back to us as quickly as possible, that would be greatly appreciated, as we can't approve the prospective tenancy until we've approved all the guarantors and they've all passed a credit check. Now, once everybody's been approved and the tenancy is going ahead, we'll send you a second form. This will come from something called Arthur Online via Signable. That's 2 pieces of software that we use, and it will send you the actual guarantor deed itself to sign. Now, because it's coming from some software, that can often get picked up by spam or junk filters, so please do look out for that and sign it online. Once you receive the document, you'll have a chance to see the actual tenancy agreement that your son or daughter is signing. If you'd like to see either of the contracts or the guarantor form before that date, you can find these both as drafts on the download section of our website. Now, before the tenants sign the actual contract itself, they will be sent another video, a bit like this, of me talking to them and explaining to them about certain legal clauses and ramifications of signing a tenancy agreement. With most student tenancies, it's their first ever time signing a contract, and we don't ever want anybody to end up signing something that they haven't fully understood. So we explain it to them in full and recommend that they actually share that video with you, the guarantor, so that you can talk through it with them and make sure that everybody understands what it is that they're signing. Now, the top question that we get asked at this point by guarantors is, am I just guaranteeing my son, daughter, or just that one tenant? Well, the short answer is no, but it doesn't really work out that way in practice. Let me explain. When we have a student tenancy, it's what's called jointly and severally liable. So, for example, let's say we have 4 tenants in a house share, tenant A, B, C, and D. Now, for ease of maths, let's say that the rent's £2,000 and each tenant has agreed to pay £500 each every month. But on the contract, it's jointly and severally liable. It has all 4 names, but only the one rent, the £2,000. That means that legally, each tenant is responsible to ensure that the whole £2,000 is paid, even though in practice, they've agreed that they're going to pay £500 each. Now, similarly, as a guarantor guarantees the liability of that respective tenant, which of course is ensuring that the whole £2,000 is paid. Now, what's important to understand here, of course, is that every tenant will go through the same process. We don't accept tenants without a guarantor or a significant amount of rent up front as financial security. Therefore, the liability is equally split between all the guarantors as well as all of the tenants. So, let's say tenant A defaults on their rent. The first thing we're going to do is contact them and pursue them for their rent. Of course, after 14 days, we're going to go to their guarantor, who's been fully credit checked, who's been approved and is financially secure. Now, in the very unlikely event that neither the tenant or the guarantor were able to be found, they disappeared off the face of the planet, the debt collectors couldn't find them, and there was no way we could find them, then yes, technically, the landlord could then come to the 3 remaining tenants and ask them to cover the portion of rent that hasn't been paid by tenant A. And in turn, if that isn't paid, then the guarantors, the other 3 guarantors, then equally guarantee their share of the liability again. But firstly, it's extremely unlikely that it should take place because everybody has a guarantor in place. And secondly, that liability is split equally amongst the remaining tenants, so it's a shared liability. I hope that makes sense. We get lots of calls about that question, and hopefully I've explained it clearly enough so it makes sense and that you're happy. It would be very easy for me just to say, oh no, it's fine, you're only guaranteeing your daughter's or son or daughter's liability. And in practice, that basically is how it works out. But I want to be clear and transparent that the reality and the legality of the situation is slightly different. I can also assure you that I've been doing this for 15 years and dealt with thousands and thousands of student tenants, and I have never ever had to ask a guarantor to pay rent for another tenant. If you've still got questions or want to clarify, please do feel free to give me or the property manager of the tenant a call, and we'd be very happy to answer any questions that you might have.